Software is the fastest growing space in the world, and I still believe software is, at 1% of its potential as a whole industry. I think that the innovation in software is going to only accelerate where software is right now. It's only 1% of where it's going to be.
Welcome to the Disruptware Podcast. Whether you're just starting up or scaling your software business, we interview the experts with ideas and strategies you can implement today. Now here's your host, Paul Clifford.
Hi there, software entrepreneurs, and welcome to the Disruptware Podcast. This is the show for entrepreneurs who are either just starting out or those who already have a software company and are looking for techniques and ideas for massively scaling their business. And the way we do that is to interview experts in the market who are already running their software company. And whatever level they are at, they have great content to share, and we dig deep to get factual experiences that you can put into action right now. So let's get on with our guest today. Okay, so I'm really keen to introduce you guys to Vinay Patankar from Process Street. Now, Vinay's just in the process of launching his MVP, so he's in beta phase, and Process Street is a tool to manage basically teams' tasks as a productivity tool. So if you think of standard operating procedures and outsourcing, then he's really come up with an ideal solution for a real market need. Vinay, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Excellent. So, look, first of all, tell me a bit about yourself. Who are you, and what do you do with Process Street?
Sure. My background's a bit of a mixed bag. I'm originally from Australia. I got a background in IT and sales, marketing, business. I worked as a software recruiter for a while, as well as worked in technology. And for the last 4 years, I've been traveling as a digital nomad, running a online lead generation company, launched 2 startups, Process Street being my second one, and I've been building Process Street product for about the last 6 months.
Wow, and you're not actually based in the US, are you? You're based, was it in Argentina or Buenos Aires?
Yeah, we're currently in Buenos Aires. Basically, the last startup that I ran, I was in San Francisco. We went through an accelerator. And didn't get the traction we wanted, so kind of ended up shutting that down. And when building Process Street, we thought, okay, we could stay in San Francisco, or go to another US city, or we could just go to somewhere that's cheaper and have a new experience of living in a different city, kind of like a semi holiday, if you will. But because we're just building the product, we didn't really need to be near any of our customers or anything at that current stage of the company. So it was just about going somewhere that we thought would be fun and a good experience, and just giving ourselves like the time and flexibility to put our heads down and actually just focus on building the product.
And do you think it's really important to sort of be in the valley, be in the Bay Area to actually get investors on board?
I definitely think it helps. There's a huge difference between the environment of being in San Francisco or in the Valley than being anywhere else in the world, because just every day, all your interactions, you're surrounded by people who can either help your business in some way or know somebody who can help your business in some way. Like just going to the local Starbucks or going out to a bar for a beer in the evening, or whatever, there's just like always people around that kind of work in that same space and are interested in what you're doing, or have connections to people that might be useful. Whereas in all the other cities, most of the other cities in the world, there isn't that same type of exposure. So I don't think, if you have an amazing product with traction, sure, you don't need to be there, but I think that just from a networking perspective, you're going to get more opportunities to pitch more people. So you're going to generate more leads by being in San Francisco than not.
Got it. And, I often tell people that, nowadays, because software is a lot faster to build and develop, it really does pay to sort of get your first customers on board and show some traction before you go out to the investor community and start scaling. How do you feel about that notion?
Yeah, no, I absolutely 100% agree. If you check out my post-mortem on my last startup, which was Vitoto, Vitoto. You can just type in like why Vitoto failed. That was one of the things that I talked about. And that was a big reason for why my last startup failed, was because I went in too early trying to raise money instead of just putting my head down and focusing on the product. So I think that there's different stages of the startup of a software startup, and I don't think that you need to be in San Francisco like right now, like when you're actually building your MVP. In fact, like the cost of living in San Francisco is so high that I probably recommend you don't go while you're building your MVP and use the money that you would spend living in San Francisco on making your product better. And once you get to a point where you have some customers, have some traction, then and you think that it's ready to kind of taking the growth stage, that's the point where you consider going back into San Francisco or raising money.
Okay. And, when you did your first startup, you hinted at this about some mistakes you made. What, looking back, would you never do again? What could you tell sort of, our tribe on, what advice could you give them when they're thinking about building their startup?
Sure. Well, there was a number of things that I think we did wrong. One of the first things was, like you mentioned before, was not getting traction. So it was what I'd basically, and not getting traction came down to kind of, I guess, a planning error. And what that was with our budget and planning, we're like, okay, we're just going to get an MVP. We're going to get MVP out the door. And once the MVP's out the door, it's going to be awesome. And then we're going to get traction and get money. And that was a huge mistake in thinking that, we only need a budget up till the MVP. Because once we launched the MVP, we're like, oh man, we actually have 6 months worth of iterations and learning from customer feedback to actually get this to a point where it can get traction. And we didn't have the runway, the budget to do all those like post MVP iterations that were needed. And without the traction, it was very difficult to raise money. So it was kind of like this catch-22 situation where you needed money to get traction, you needed traction to get money, and that wasn't planned for from the beginning, and that was one of the crucial mistakes. And then that was probably the most crucial mistake. And then kind of things that tapped into that were, for example, the team. Basically, the team that I kind of put together for Vitoto was a very experienced team, but also expensive. There were 2 guys from Australia, and they had a lot of overheads, mortgages, offices, stuff like that needed to be covered. And Australia is definitely not cheap to operate in either. So that kind of meant that our runway didn't last as long. We didn't do enough UX testing. So that was another problem. So we should have done a lot more kind of paper testing or mock-up testing on users to make sure that the UX flow was great, because without a strong UX, it was very difficult to get the traction that we needed. And we learned that after the MVP came out, and after we kind of had spent a lot of the money, whereas we should have learned that before at the beginning, and done cheap tests. Like I think there's an app called Pop. Have you heard of Pop?
I haven't heard of Pop actually. No.
So Pop's an app that it's an iPhone app. And basically what it lets you do is draw mock-ups of software, of screens for an app. So you can have like, this is what my screen's going to look like, this is where a button's going to be, this is where a video is going to be, this is where some comment's going to be.
Okay.
And then you can draw multiple screens, and then you can actually link the screens together. So you can kind of fake the experience of your app using Pop. And then, so they say like a great way of doing kind of UX testing is to, and this is something that we should have done if we didn't, is kind of mock up your app using this tool and then walk around to get people to use it. And this is a way to actually 100% free, or whatever, $5 for the app or whatever it costs. You can actually do UX testing without even spending a cent on development.
Right. Well, actually, I mean, so it's essentially like a wireframing tool but you can actually build screens.
It's an interactive wireframing tool.
Yeah.
So you can link those together and actually give it to someone and say, hey, try and use this.
Got it.
And then you can kind of watch them.
So what I use is Balsamic, which is it's very quick to build wireframes, and you can link all the buttons and everything together. So it is very, very clickable. But it's the stage before getting a designer involved. So you can actually test a concept, with prospects straight away, even though it doesn't look pretty, but it still enables you to test the workflow and get feedback immediately and validation as to whether this model is actually going to work.
And and I don't think that looks are very important anymore. I mean, on mobile apps, I think they're probably more important, but I think design's a bit of a commodity these days. You have things like Bootstrap and you have themes and all that kind of stuff, which makes design pretty simple. I think that the actual UX, the experience, like the flow of the app, is much more important than like whether it's got pretty colors or not.
Exactly. No, that's spot on. So, what other tools do you use? So when you've obviously got a small team together for Process Street, what tools do you use to sort of communicate with them on your ideas and your concepts and sort of get that validated and into code?
Well, for me, I live with my co-founder, who's my CTO. So
yes,
we generally just shout.
That's one way of doing it, isn't it?
We kind of shout across the living room, but we do a lot of our communication just through GitHub.
Yeah.
So, and the reason that we do that is we try and keep it in GitHub because you can actually attach your communication to the code itself. So when there's an issue or an error that a bug that comes up or a feature that needs to go in, if we communicate that within GitHub, that can actually be attached to the code itself as like a comment or whatever, and that kind of reduces the workflow of having to jump between two different apps. For Cameron, for our CTO, he can kind of do everything just in one. So that's kind of our main communication tool outside of the normal like phone call, face to face, Skype kind of communications.
Right.
We'll go over things kind of at a higher level, and then when things get locked down, then we'll put it into GitHub and use that as the kind of main way of tracking everything.
Okay, good. And so when you first had the idea, did you do any mock-ups or anything like that to, explain that to your CTO?
Yeah, well, yeah. The first thing that I did was, and it wasn't so much a tech mock-up. It was more of a product pitch deck, because I guess the difference was that Cameron's a co-founder, so. And okay, this was actually another thing that another lesson that I learned from Vitoto, but it was actually that I definitely wanted my developer to be a co-founder. I didn't want them to be an outsourcer, because I've built software before with outsourcers, and that was one of the issues with Vitoto, is that like this, kind of running out of runway. So I wanted to keep it as lean as possible. I wanted to find someone who wouldn't just like go, oh, that's a nice piece of software, we can build it. I wanted someone who actually believed in like the vision of the company and believed that it could be successful, and was going to be more committed than just someone that you pay to kind of build something. Because I knew that from my past experience, you're going to get a lot of bugs, you're going to get a lot of problems, and you're going to need to fix them, and it's always going to take longer and be harder than you expect it to be. And all of that costs money if you're paying someone. You might budget 6 months, but I mean, every single project I've ever done in software has always been over budget over time. And kind of taking that experience, I wanted someone who, was on board and believed in the vision and was able to commit, more than just, was willing to commit more than just the normal 40-hour work week, and more than if the budget runs out, it's like, thing isn't over. It's like, let's figure out something. You know what I mean? So kind of that I wanted that flexibility to be able to go longer than needed, and to be able to make more mistakes, because I think that they always happen in software.
Of course, yeah, and that's a very obvious way of doing it. Working with a really, really good tech partner. Obviously, a disadvantage to that is you're sharing your equity right from out the gate.
Right.
But you're right in that you get buy-in straight away. So, and because of that, your communication loop doesn't have to be as strong either.
Yeah, because you're working so close to that person. But I mean, like, Cameron charges $130 an hour freelancing. So for me to pay him for 6 months, or even a year and a half or whatever it's going to take would be very expensive. So it's that's the kind of trade-off of equity versus paying someone, right?
Exactly. And is it just the two of you at the moment, or are you looking for someone else as well?
So yeah, we're the two co-founders. I mean, I have outsourcers to help with marketing and to help with like the front end, like WordPress website and stuff like that, which is kind of all my domain. So Cameron basically just focused on the actual app, um, the actual core product, and then everything else is basically me and outsourcers helping me get the rest of the business tasks done. Um, so that's the current setup. But yeah, I mean, we are definitely looking to grow. I'm looking for a content marketer at the moment, and we're going to be looking for a mobile developer in probably a few months as well.
Brilliant. So the product itself is, a way of people who outsource a lot to create their standard operating procedures. Okay, so you're really simplifying the whole process. And by simplifying it, you're encouraging people to create more SOPs, which of course, is something that every company needs to do if they really want to grow and scale. Yeah. How
Right.
did you come across that idea? How the whole concept? Why did you decide to go into that? Did you do any sort of market research? Are there competitors out there in the market right now doing that? And how did you decide that there's a niche worth going for, or a gap in the market?
Sure. This was another thing that I learned from my first startup. But my first startup, I kind of just built it because I'm like, whoa, that's a cool idea. People will probably like this. And I talked to some people about the idea, and they're like, oh yeah, that's a cool idea. But there wasn't really any validation. For this idea, the point that I started was from scratching my own itch. So I have a online lead generation business, and I work with a number of outsourcers myself. And I was frustrated with communicating tasks effectively to them. I was frustrated with being able to quickly create standard operating procedures. I was frustrated with repeated mistakes from my team, and I wanted not just a way to be able to create standard operating procedures quickly, but I wanted a way to actually be able to track and see, when and how those tasks are being done as well. So I needed a richer experience, and this was basically, I'm like, this seems like a pretty simple product. Surely there's something out there, and I just couldn't find anything that had the experience that I wanted. There are a number of document management systems. You can use stuff like Google Docs, and there are a couple of, there's actually a number of SOP software competitors out there as well, but most of them use very old technology, and they kind of structure it in like a template document management. It's not very interactive, and it's very old in terms of the tech, and user experience was just nowhere near up to kind of what I come to expect from modern SaaS apps. I'm looking for something that's like a Trello or like an Asana, that is a really smooth, easy, fast way of doing it, and kind of all the products that I came across were clunky and slow and ancient. So I'm like, okay, this is something that I'm willing to pay for right now. I have my card out, trying to buy something, and I can't find a solution for it. So that was kind of the point that I started from, just trying to fulfill my own need. And through that, I kind of said, okay, this could be an opportunity, and then I built the pitch deck, and basically just started showing that around and gathering feedback, and kind of went from there.
Brilliant. And I've noticed, in using the app, it is really slick. You've followed sort of the Trello style technology, as you mentioned, in that everything's sort of in the browser, so it's very quick and interactive to use. And of course, you've really focused on simplicity, which I really, really like a lot.
Right.
So what are your goals with the product? Where do you want to take it?
We want to make it amazing. Like, we think that right now, it's kind of a core product. The experience is getting there from the simplicity of the features. So, just to explain how it works quickly for people that might not have used it. But basically, what you can do is you can come in and you can create a process template or a standard operating procedure template. And the way that we structure that is we structure it as a checklist. So you can create each task. Say your checklist is doing a weekly email newsletter. And so the first thing is you've got to write the content, you've got to proof the content, spell check it, you've got to gather any additional links or resources, you've got to put it into MailChimp or whatever you're using, you've got to schedule it, and then potentially depending on who's doing it, you might need a manager to review it and check off and make sure that it's good to go out, or another teammate to kind of do that. So that kind of process that needs to be done each week on sending out your weekly newsletter for your company. That's basically it. It's like a step-by-step process. So step 1 would be create content. Step 2 would be run your spell checks. Step 3 would be load it into MailChimp, etc. And the way that you can build the template is doing this step-by-step checklist. But what we've actually done is taken it a step further and allow you to add in rich content into each of those checklist task items. So if your task is add the content to MailChimp, inside that you can have videos or screenshots or text explaining exactly how you want to do it. Like you could explain, what they should name the campaign, and exactly how the text should be formatted, or exactly how what dimensions images need to be, and you can talk through it in a screencast or whatever. So you can create this kind of very specific way of doing these tasks in a manner so that it keeps your quality high and consistent. So when people are doing it, each email that goes out each week is the same, or at least the same kind of structure and formatting. B, it's documented in so much detail that if the person doing it ever leaves, or is sick, or wants to hand it off to somebody else or train somebody else, then somebody can just come in and easily take over that job. So it helps with training new employees. It helps with removing downtime from people being sick or leaving. And it helps you kind of systemize and take a step back and remove yourself as the bottleneck from your business.
Excellent. No, that's really good. I think we'll put a link below this podcast as well, so people can actually go and take a look at the product. And at the moment, you're at you're in beta phase, aren't you? So you're testing and you're looking for feedback from customers. So you want more people to use it, so that you can really identify whether it's a good fit, right?
Yeah, so that's basically how we're following the lean startup methodology. For anybody who hasn't read that and is looking to create a software product, definitely highly recommend it as one of the top of your list books to read. And basically they talk about just following this kind of lean development cycle where you get the most basic version of the product out as possible, and instead of you trying to make assumptions of what your users want and need, you get the product out and you start talking to your users, and then you make your decisions based on the feedback that you get from your users. So it's like you actually make your decisions based on real data. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get as many people on and figure out what the most requested features are, what the most noticed bugs are, and we adjust our priorities based on the feedback from our users.
Okay, brilliant. Now, what is your traffic strategy? So once you get this live and you're ready to sort of really get people on board, how are you going to go out to market and actually get people to sign up?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. So from my learnings of startup, to kind of really prove a software model, there are two things you need to prove. You need to prove your product market fit hypothesis, and then you need to prove your growth hypothesis. So once you've kind of proven both of those two things, you're at a point where your startup is basically perceived as proven or validated, and it becomes pretty easy to say, raise money or get more traction, etc. So, I mean, the first step that we've been working on is proving the product market fit hypothesis, which basically means are you building a product that's valuable enough that people actually want to pay for? That's kind of the first step. And then the second step is proving the growth hypothesis. And the growth hypothesis basically talks about can you get a good enough customer acquisition cost relative to your lifetime value of each customer. So that's going to be our next challenge. And basically, to answer that question, I don't know exactly what traffic strategy is going to work best, but what we're going to do is run a series of tests across different traffic strategies to figure out which one provides us the best customer acquisition cost. And so things that we're currently planning on trying is content marketing, so getting a content marketing team, doing very consistent content. I know you have a product, Kunani, which is great for that, so considering testing out some tools like that. And yeah, just building up that consistent content marketing strategy. Also with content marketing, we're kind of looking at doing some more advanced stuff, so doing retargeting on content, pushing content views to kind of build the blog subscriber base using paid traffic sources, like so retargeting through Facebook, running Facebook ads, running YouTube retargeting ads, stuff like that. And beyond content marketing, look at just generic paid campaigns, so Facebook, AdWords, and I know you mentioned this before when we were talking before, running ads on freelancers. So I think that's a great idea, something that I definitely want to test as well.
Yeah, you need to you need to sit around anyone who's outsourcing.
Right.
So any tool, product, service, anything like that where people are involved in outsourcing. So another site are all the job boards for the Philippines, for example. Mm-hmm. All those job boards, they'll be perfect for that.
Yeah, outsourcing is definitely a great I guess sector that we want to start on. But I think you asked this question before, and I didn't really get to answer it properly. But like, where do we see Process Street going? We definitely see it being a lot bigger than just targeting the outsourcing market. Already now we have a number of users and customers that run that space. We have like patent lawyers that use it for every time they need to run through like a patent check. We have financial advisors using it. We have real estate companies using it to follow the process of like every time they need to get all the documents from someone to close a deal on a house. We have IT maintenance or infrastructure companies using it every time they need to deploy a server. They run the process. And then we want to grow out into, for example, mobile. So we want to for building inspectors, people that need to go around and do inspections on buildings, check the roof, check the piping, attach it, integrate it in with photos and stuff like that. So we definitely see it as being a much larger product than just the outsourcing space. But as the product's kind of built as a beta product, we don't have mobile, we don't have some of the more advanced stuff that maybe finance companies might need, such as parallel processes or process dependencies, kind of getting a bit closer to the BPM space. Outsourcing is definitely a great place for us to start and get initial traction and an initial user base.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think the great thing, with these types of products is being able to, specifically target one niche. And, if you master that niche, then you can sort of grow and target another one. I was at an event the other day, and the one comment that came out at the event was like, if you look at Facebook, what's Facebook's market? Well, basically anyone with a face. But when they started, their market was just Harvard.
Right.
And, all they did was conquer Harvard. Right. And then once they did that, then they expanded it to the other Ivy League universities.
Right.
And then after that, they went after everything.
Yeah. It's a pretty common story, I think, because it's like basically as a startup, you don't really have the resources to target everyone. And also it's difficult to kind of get your messaging correct. And honestly, that's been a bit of a challenge for us is trying to figure out exactly which markets to target and kind of drilling down on our niche. And it's something that we still need to work on.
Cool. So that's really good. Now, obviously, you're a software entrepreneur, and you've got other businesses as well. How do you keep focused, or how do you sort of manage your personal productivity? Because this is something that I get questioned on a lot, because there's so much going on, and we all suffer a bit from ADD. So, what tools or mindset do you use to sort of really, get through your day and ensure you stay on track?
Sure. Well, yeah, I'm definitely a productivity tool fanatic. So, I mean, I use everything. I use Asana, I use Trello, I use Workflowy, I use Evernote, I use Streak for my CRM. Um, and yeah, we use GitHub for the software. So I definitely use leverage tools a lot to keep me on top. And depending on what the task is and kind of what's going on, I'll use different tools. So I'll give you an example. So Asana I use for my lead generation business mostly. I honestly don't actually use it myself that much, but I have my team use it. And Asana is great because it logs everything. So it's a way for me to go in and kind of, if there's ever an issue or if I need to get data on what's going on in a particular project or whatever, I can go in and kind of check that. But I find it's a bit slow for me to use myself. Trello I use for content. So I find it great to kind of visualize posts as they're being created and guest posts and that kind of strategy. Workflowy I just use to organize my brain, to just dump. I don't know if have you ever heard of Workflowy?
Yeah. Love it.
So,
love its simplicity.
Yeah, so I use Workflowy just kind of. I used to use Evernote for this, for just kind of dumping thoughts, but I find Workflowy has much nicer structure just for text and ideas. And then I use Evernote for document management, screenshots, and just kind of collect like clipping different sites and websites and everything like that to kind of just dump everything into one place that I can do searches on. So that's what's. I'm not a very like innately organized person. So tools like Evernote and Gmail, where I don't have to actually think about how I'm going to organize something, I can just dump everything I want into it, and I can use search to find stuff quickly. Are tools that I really love. And Workflowy is the same kind of way. Even though there's a structured Workflowy, I still heavily use the search feature. Because to me, I'm more about just like dumping stuff in and then being able to recall it quickly without having to think about where I'm going to organize, what I'm doing.
Brilliant.
So yeah, I use a lot of tools, but I don't know if I'm probably the best person to talk to about productivity and organization because I'm a bit of a mess sometimes.
Aren't we all right? Cool. So, and what would you sort of recommend, for people, starting up? What would you recommend as the best books to go out and read?
So if you're looking to build a software product,
yeah.
Well, the Lean Startup definitely is a great one, and I mean, then it's going to come down to I guess what your experience is. I mean, for me, one great thing I find is from being a very heavy user of a lot of kind of different tools and web apps, is that it gives you a great insight into like user experience and product from that perspective. But so I know there are a number of great design and UX books out there, which I haven't really read that much, but if that's something that you don't have much experience with, then I think that almost product and UX is almost the most important thing.
Okay.
So it really depends on the level of experience you have. There are great books by 37 Signals. I've read all their stuff. They have a lot of great books on. They talk about. There's like their main book, I don't remember it is, but it talks about like how they build Basecamp, and they basically talk about kind of building a product without trying to look for funding. So they build it themselves. They focus on. They talk about how they built Basecamp for the first time. So they were doing a web consultancy, and if you don't know who 37 Signals are, they're the guys who created Ruby on Rails, and they have a Basecamp and a bunch of other really successful SaaS products. And they were a team doing web consulting, and they kind of used their web consulting business to get to generate revenue. And then on the side, as a side project, they started building Basecamp, and they didn't go out and look for funding. They didn't try and get it done quickly. They just like plugged away at it, just making it better. And never kind of got that stress of running out of money or anything like that, because they already had a profitable consulting business. And they just kept doing that until they got Basecamp to a point where it was generating enough revenue, had enough users, so that they could actually stop their consulting business.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of the model that we've taken with Cross the Street as well, because I think it's a lot lower stress. And also, like I was mentioning before, there are so many unforeseens that they're going to come up in software. Like if you're a first-time software entrepreneur, like whatever budget you put out, whatever like timeline you set, triple both those things. There are so many things you're never ever going to imagine that would come up that are going to come up, and And if you go, okay, I have 20 grand and 3 months to like make this happen, like I would say that's a pretty risky position to put yourself in.
Yeah, absolutely. The book, by the way, is Rework. Yeah, and some of the things that also come out of that I really loved is first of all saying no. Saying no to feature requests, because one thing that Basecamp is great for is simplicity and ease of use, and that's all down to being really, really strong and resisting customer pressure and really only putting in the features that are really, really essential and add value. Because it's really, really easy, especially in the early days, to just build feature after feature after feature, thinking that this is what's going to make the product great. But in fact, what makes the product great is the user experience.
Exactly.
Okay, and that's the key thing.
There's a lot of mistakes people make around that. So I think you want to keep it as simple as possible, and like the thing is, you want to especially when you're just getting your product out. So don't hold back your release of your product because, and this is kind of a lean startup methodology, don't hold back your release of your product because you think you need this feature or that feature. Like, don't worry about it. Like, the first versions of Twitter or Facebook of every single product that were out, absolutely horrible, don't even look like they look like now. And they would have never gotten to that point if they hadn't have released those products early on and gotten the feedback and adjusted their development trajectory based on the feedback that they got. So you want to get the product out as soon as possible. Don't hold back for extra features. When you do want to build features, make sure that the features that you're selecting are the features that have been most requested by your most aligned customers. So ideally, customers that are paying you. And if one person asks for one feature once, don't go, okay, we'll do it. Wait and make sure that a lot of people, that it's a kind of a highly requested feature, so that you know that you're going to be satisfying a larger portion of your customer base versus just like one person who needs one thing done. Also, another tip, never ever tell somebody that you're going to have a feature done by a particular time. Even if you know you're going to be building that feature, don't say, oh yeah, we're going to have it done in 2 weeks, because you're probably not. So just say, yeah, it's something that's on the roadmap that we're going to be working on in the future. And like, don't give it time, because people are going to come back to me like, yo, it's 2 weeks, but where's that feature? And in software, everything takes longer. Yeah,
the golden rule there is always under-promise and over-deliver.
Exactly. But we're set up to scale. So we're on EC2. We've got, so there's 2 servers for the product. So there's like the API server, which is like the kind of core app server, and then there's the front end server, and they're both on EC2 load balancers, and then the database is on RDS. So it's all set up for like infinite scale, basically.
How much does that cost you?
That total, because they're all on micros, so not much, $100 a month.
Right.
Yeah, it's $100 a month on for all those 3 servers, and they only but like if they hit 80% load, then they spawn new servers.
Right.
So that cost goes up if traffic goes up. And then we're hosting the WordPress site on PressBuddy, which used to be ZippyKid. PressBuddy is really cool. You should check them out now. And basically, it's scalable WordPress hosting. So it's like they manage the load balancing, the RDS, and like a CDN, like content delivery network, all for you.
Right.
So like all parts of the product are on like infinite scale, basically.
Right.
And it's super cheap. Like that whole setup's like $125 a month. That's like super lean. I mean, it's probably worth even doing it again. But like that's one of the huge developments that's happened in technology in the last 5 years, right? For $125 a month, we have an infinitely scalable content like CDN delivered, like worldwide, server setup that 10 years ago would have required a team of sysadmins to kind of manage and build like in a data center, and now for $125 a month and whatever a week worth of config, we have an infinitely scalable platform.
That's really cool. Good stuff. Brilliant. So, Vinay, any sort of final thoughts for any of my tribe who are looking to either start software businesses or are in the process of scaling, their SaaS businesses?
Mm-hmm. Well, I definitely think that building software has definitely been one of the most fun and rewarding things that I've done, because you're building a product from the concept of delivering real value. It's kind of different to people that might be coming from the marketing world and stuff like that, where it's kind of build a product with great copy so that you can sell it. And for us with our products, it's been great because we've just been focusing on trying to build a product that will sell itself. So just trying to offer so much more value than what we charge, that people can't. People are like, they'd be stupid to not convert that. So I definitely think that if it's something that you're interested in, and obviously the monetary and upside potential is infinite. Software is the fastest growing space in the world easily, and I still believe software is at 1% of its potential as a whole industry. I think that the innovation in software is going to only accelerate, and where software is right now, it's only 1% of where it's going to be 100 years from now, whatever.
Brilliant.
So yeah, definitely think it's a great space, but definitely make sure that you're prepared for the long run. It takes time, and be prepared for things taking longer and costing more than you expect. Yeah, so I just want to say, I guess if anyone wants to check out our product, it's free for teams of up to 3 people right now, and you can get it at www.process.st.
That's great, Vinay. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
No worries. Great speaking to you, Paul.
Thanks for that, and thanks to all the listeners. If you enjoyed the show, you can get the show notes from disruptware.com. And if you are not a subscriber and you're listening to this on the iTunes store, then please visit disruptware.com and sign up. That's it for this episode. Look out for next week's show. I'm Paul Clifford, and thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Disruptware podcast. Check us out on the web at disruptware.com.